what is affordable housing and what does it look like? Does it mean less amenities in the houses themselves? Does it mean smaller houses? Does it mean zoning changes when we talk about affordable housing? Because I'll be honest, when I talk about it and I hear people talk about it, it's this overarching thing, oh, affordable housing. But I don't think people tend to get into the meat and potatoes of exactly what that actually means. And if you don't get into that conversation first and present it in a way that I think makes sense for municipalities, for zoning, even for the state, I don't think you're going to get very far.
Yeah. Okay, the Gentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Gentry. The Gentry Podcast. The Gentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry Podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest. I'm your host, Jonathan Mason. But more important than that, we have Derek Davis, who is the Township Manager of East Goshen Township in Pennsylvania. He brings a wealth of knowledge. He's worked at different levels within the government. And spoiler alert, he turned away a little bit more from the political side and found his sweet spot as a township manager. So, Derek, before we get too far, how are you doing today?
Good. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing very well. A little bit under the weather. My 20-month always likes to get me and my wife sick, but we're battling through. So I appreciate your patience with it.
I'm glad it's above freezing at this point.
I can definitely understand that. Before we get too far into it, what is the secret sauce? What makes East Goshen Township the best place to live in America?
Well, I think it's cliche to say this, but the people on the resident level, we have a lot of people throughout East Goshen that care deeply about local government, contributing to local government. If you look at our ABCs, our authorities, boards, and commission, just the ones that are below the Board of Supervisors, which is my governing body, which my bosses, you have planning commission, you have environmental advisory committees, you have conservancy board, you have different aspects, sewer authority. So you have these people that are contributing to the municipal world and not getting anything in return from a monetary standpoint. So they are, in my opinion, the backbone of kind of what makes East Goshen go, in addition to our elected officials. But I would say the people, we have a lot of people throughout this township that care deeply about how this township is run. And I think really it's shown in the way, in the X's and O's of it all. If you look at our AAA bond rating, our financial situation, the fact that we have one of the most amazing parks in the county. I know I'm a little biased, but East Goshen Park is right up there, if not the best parks and rec department. So it takes a lot. It takes every one of us to make that happen. But I think the secret sauce is the people that care deeply about this community and want to make sure it's one of the best places you could live in the country.
Love that when a community has true buy-in from the people that are leading the community itself, but then also the people that are living and truly taking ownership of their community. That is beautiful. But I always say you learn a lot about community by learning about their leadership. So you have to tell me, Derek, what was childhood like? Did you always know you wanted to get into public service, even as a young child?
No. I grew up in South Philadelphia, so a big city, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I didn't, going through my childhood years, I don't think I knew other forms of government existed beyond, big cities such as Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles. So no, I can firmly say that when I was younger, I had no ambitions to be where I am today. Now, growing up where I did, there was plenty of people that were in mainly trades, unions, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, longshoremen, work on the docks, really salt of the earth, blue collar workers who I looked up to and really continue to be the backbone of this country, in my opinion, in terms of their contributions to the economics of the United States. So I think for a bit, I was probably going to go the union route and join the family members that I have there, the friends that I have there. But I was always interested in politics and government to a certain level. Now, there's not enough separation of those two, in my opinion, and we can get to that in another question. But when you look at terms of like public administration being an option over politics, vice versa, we were definitely aware, in Philadelphia, big political city. So it was always an interest to me. So when I got to Penn State, I first majored in business. That didn't work out, and I won't get into that. But a shout out to Penn State Business School. They are one of the best in my opinion. But I wound up switching over to political science and eventually went to Westchester University to get my public administration degree, master's in public administration. Um, so yeah, it was a long and winding road, but I really, really enjoy the public administration part of it, and the logistics of figuring out how these municipalities can work, how they can work together, what sort of things can we do on a regional basis, what do we have to do on a individual level. The Commonwealth is an interesting setup here in Pennsylvania versus some of the other states. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work that we do on the local level that I think a lot of people don't realize how much work it is. So I'm happy to have forums like this where we can kind of share that for sure.
Thanks, Derek. And I'm going to jump a little bit out of order here, but the way you brought it up, and I hear about the Commonwealth and even townships themselves. Can you kind of speak to that structure of geography and government, and how that interplays with the rest of the Commonwealth?
Sure. So there's four Commonwealths total out of 50 states now. There's us. They are us, Kentucky, Massachusetts, and Virginia. So I think those are the four Commonwealths. I hope I'm correct. So Pennsylvania and the other Commonwealths. The easiest way to explain it is we have a lot of power vested at the municipal level, whereas a lot of things may be at the county level in other states and other situations. So I like to say we have our own little fiefdoms, if you will, all over Pennsylvania. And it makes it a challenge because you have so many small municipalities that have a lot of responsibility, but it also makes it fun for me because, I think at this level, possibly in other states, I'm not as familiar with them, but I know from, my education, my background, there's a lot vested in us and what we have to do for our citizens that maybe at the county level somewhere else. So it's a lot of responsibility, but it's also makes it interesting on a daily basis for sure.
That's awesome. And I appreciate you giving our viewers a little bit more insight into what a Commonwealth is. Now, kind of shifting to East Goshen specifically, what are your strategic priorities? I know you guys did a comprehensive plan.
Oh, yeah, 2015 was our last comprehensive plan. And I think that is, as you mentioned, probably one of the things coming up soon because you're supposed to be doing it at least every decade to try to update your priorities from a land use perspective is really what the comprehensive plans are about. And as you know, we're no different. Everything revolves around elections, election cycles, who gets elected. So we had an election in November. So we have two new elected officials on our board of supervisors. Again, the five people that are my bosses, just having a conversation in general with new board members, the five members in totality at public meetings. It seems like the new focus will be trying to complete that comprehensive plan to give us sort of a guide going forward for changes in the comprehensive plan because things, our last comprehensive plan was pre-COVID. So what sort of things change in the way we live now versus the way we lived pre-2020, that might be a big thing in the comprehensive plan from a land use perspective. But we really are looking at accomplishing that comprehensive plan. East Goshen is pretty built out. We don't have swaths of open land all over the place to sort of start anew. So a lot of the things that'll be happening is going to be through redevelopment and different things that may happen on a commercial aspect, but also residential aspect would probably be more focused on things such as redevelopment versus brand new development where there's an open swath of land, which is, I guess, a little bit easier to explain, but definitely not the case in East Goshen.
Wow. Now, while we're on the topic, I'll take a look, a more double click on that. But housing is so important throughout the United States, but it looks different everywhere. Like as you stated that you don't have a ton of land that can be developed, but you're looking more at like infill and redeveloping areas. So, what does the housing stock look like currently, and are there any places that you feel the housing stock is underbuilt and you may need to focus on something a little bit different?
Yeah, so we are mainly we call R2 is a residential 1 acre per home. So we are, I would say again, even if you compare it to where I grew up in South Philadelphia, we're pretty spread out in that regard. Going back to the Commonwealth aspect of it now, we work, even though we have a lot of powers invested in us, we do work with our county, Chester County, who also has a lot of responsibility in other aspects and a lot of things in terms of housing and planning around housing. And they have their own comprehensive plan, which they have priorities with. So financial assistance on that level. So that a lot of that is actually on the county level. So we have to work in conjunction with the county to figure that stuff out. When you talk about the municipalities aspect of it, it's more of the land use perspective, the zoning of it. How do we allow things to come our way from a zoning perspective? What to get more to the heart of your question, I think we probably are understocked in what a lot of people are understocked in affordable housing. But I would probably pose it in a different way. And I know in our previous conversation, I brought this up. I think there has to be, and I know housing is an important topic to you and affordable housing and looking at America and how we're currently going about it. Um, I think there has to be a little bit more of an internal conversation with people trying to figure that out before we even get to the government aspect of it. And what I mean by that is, I think there are a lot of competing interests. There's a lot of competing interests on people that think they're on the same side of that subject. So, you have a lot of associations that are out there lobbying for affordable housing, and people need to have affordable housing in order to, give their children a better education, in order to provide them the necessities that they need in this life. I 100% agree with that. And then you have this people on the same side will say realtors, will say land developers. They are technically, in my opinion, on the same side of that subject from a outside looking in standpoint. They want certain things to be, and the subject comes up. You talk about, a lot of things that'll come up will be, well, you need more density. You need zoning changes. To me, not to be a cynic, but I see people on the real estate development side come in and say, well, we love that. Let's try to get more houses in there. That's more money for us. And yeah, it's under the guise of affordable housing, but it's not really going to be affordable. So I think in some ways they pair up with the associations and the people that really, really, truly care about affordable housing in a slightly dishonest way, because I think they know density doesn't always mean it's going to be more affordable. So the reason I bring that up is to bring it back to, I think we need to start a little bit, or I think people need to start a little bit from square one to say, okay, what is affordable housing and what does it look like? Does it mean less amenities in the houses themselves? Does it mean smaller houses? Does it mean zoning changes? What exactly are we getting at when we talk about affordable housing? Because I'll be honest, when I talk about it and I hear people talk about it, it's this overarching thing, oh, affordable housing. But I don't think people tend to get into the meat and potatoes of exactly what that actually means. And if you don't get into that conversation first and present it in a way that I think makes sense for municipalities, for zoning, even for the state, I don't think you're going to get very far in that conversation. And if we get into other questions related to housing, I'll keep coming back to that theme because I think it's an important one. I think we, as government entities, whether it's the municipalities, the county, I think we all should care about, can people adequately live in our jurisdictions? But I think we have to have a more elementary conversation even of what that looks like from the perspective of the people lobbying for more affordable housing, as well as others that are tied into that conversation that may not be as genuine in their bottom line.
Great delineation. Just Just because somebody is or lobbying for the same things don't necessarily mean that the tactics and the output of that support is always going in the same direction. I do want to double click a touch when you speak of the people that genuinely are those of the community that are thinking about the long term of maybe their kids or their children coming back and living in the community or potentially themselves aging in place and are looking for affordable options. Do they have to kind of get into the meat and potatoes? Do they have a certain type of housing? Have they thought through like what that housing for them or their children would look like just to see how they see affordable housing?
Again, we don't on the municipal level, we don't tend to get into the conversations with those type of associations. A lot of it is at the county level, and a lot of those groups do function to be, I would say, more lobbying groups in Harrisburg and the Commonwealth level. And I think they realize change has to come from the state legislature in some ways. But again, I would just caution a lot of those groups to say, let's see if those changes actually make sense. Because I'll give you an example, a concrete example of something that was circulating in the state legislature, and that was a bill to essentially make zoning a little bit more free flowing in that you could build different kind of homes and different, more dense homes in places that maybe was just single family home. And that was a bill. And I think, again, from the outside looking in, that may look like a great idea for affordable housing. But going back to it, does the density portion of it mean it's going to be more affordable? I could tell you in Chester County, I'll take it out and zoom out to the county a little bit versus just East Goshen. But I could tell you in Chester County, the density is not equaling affordability, in my opinion. I mean, we're not even just touching on ownership. Let's just talk about apartments. We don't have a lot of, I would say, huge apartment. We have some apartment complexes in East Goshen for sure, but there's a lot of places around the county with a little bit more high-rise, dense apartments being built in certain areas. And go online and look at those prices for the amount that they're getting for rents in those places, and it can be more than a mortgage. So I think, again, there just needs to be a little bit more conversation at the entry level of how do we want to present this? What actually does equal affordability? Because I don't think, in my opinion, it's just density. I don't have the answer right now. I think it's a lot of stakeholders that have to give that answer. But you talk about building codes. I think building codes are important. So I don't think we could walk back too much in how we plan for the safety of future residents with building codes and making sure that things are built safely as we possibly can. And then are we looking, and nowadays a lot of things are built with tricked out places. They have all the kind of Ethernet hookups. They have all kind of different things in houses nowadays with amenities that they did not have years ago. So certain things add to costs of housing overall. So when we look at that, is there some amenity rollback that needs to happen in order to make houses more affordable? And also, do we have to define more of, okay, we're not just talking about ownership, we're talking about renting and making it not only more affordable to buy, but also more affordable to rent. So I'll be honest with you, I don't think East Goshen is the case study for affordable housing. I mean, we have aspects of this community that are very affluent, but we do have some areas that are, apartment complexes and people that are just as much part of our community. I know this is a conversation that is worth having.
Definitely. And I think it's so nuanced. And it means, and that's why I always ask the question, because it means such a different thing in different municipalities. And then some people are of the mindset that, hey, it's not even the affordability issue is deeper than the price that somebody pays to live in a particular housing structure, whether it be a single family apartment or a multifamily. It's their ability to afford it, which is more of a jobs problem or jobs issue or a challenge of making sure that their industry is there that is going to allow them to afford those homes. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at such a large issue.
And then I'll take that a step further. And then particularly in Pennsylvania, I'm glad you touched on that because there's just so many different public policies that affect everything else. And it's all sort of works in tandem because We also have the school districts and the tax base. Obviously, school districts in Pennsylvania are funded at the real estate tax level. And then, some school districts obviously are better than others. And the value of the homes can really fluctuate based on what school districts everybody is in. So you're going to have less affordable housing if you're in better school districts. So there's, I feel like, a lot of different subjects that touch upon the affordable housing issue. So, yeah.
Sure. I know if there was one like easy answer, I think everybody would at least try it. But it's definitely just a tiered answer in my opinion. But I appreciate you giving us the perspective on East Goshen specifically. Now, kind of taking a step back to your day to day, and in a previous conversation we had, you stated that you were given the keys to the Cadillac. So what did you mean by that, and how does that affect how you lead the township?
Yeah. And I think, I took over for a manager that was here for almost a half a century. Now he wasn't the manager for half a century, but he was here at this building, and then he was manager for probably 30 years. I forget the exact number. So they had a very stable situation here in East Goshen. Again, AAA bottom rating, fiscal situation is really good compared to others. I think and you and I had this conversation before, I think when you take over somewhere in crisis, it could be a little bit, even though they could be tough situations, it could be a little bit sexier topics of, how you rise out of the ashes and fix those situations. But I think from my perspective, the situation I took over, it was, at least for me internally and mentally, a little bit of a challenge because okay, well, I can't mess this up. I feel like we're in a good situation. It's a great township. We don't have too many issues comparably. Now, there's policy makers here, and they're all good people. They have their differences on how to go about things and how do we direct the future of East Goshen Township. But overall, yeah, we had a great situation when I took over, in my opinion. Great Parks and Rec department. Our public works is top notch, and the things that they do. Just got through a lot of winter operations with the plowing, and as always did a fantastic job. So I will take them above any other public works department in the county, in the Commonwealth, and in the country. So I appreciate what they do. And yeah, so it was just, when I said that, it was a matter of, I don't want to mess this up. I want to keep this train rolling in terms of being a great place to work, a great place to live. And I think we've been able to do that. And it's more of a grind than anything else. And you have to put your head down, do the work, understand that it's not going to be headline grabbing news that we're doing here. And we try to go about things every day. Every day is different, whether we're dealing with weather, whether we're dealing with our annual audit that just came up, whether we're dealing with Parks and Rec events, whether I'm dealing with certain projects that I'm working on, such as I referenced probably the comprehensive plan coming up that we're probably going to take a look at that's imminent. So really, it's just about putting in the work, putting your head down, doing the grind, and not trying to seek recognition, and just being able to be invisible really in the background. And it's not that I don't work any harder, but I really, really believe in that distinction between the elected officials and the policymakers versus people that are in the public administration aspect of it and thinking about the day-to-day task and the logistics of making this government run for the people of East Goshen. So that's very important to me. And I don't think it's our job to be up front and center. Now, I'm here for the community. I'll talk to anybody. A lot of people have my cell phones around here, numbers. They can call the township building whenever. I mean, that's what I like about being a small municipality. We're 18,000 and change. And if people have any issues that come up, I talk to them on a very personal level. And that goes back to, again, the secret sauce that we talked about earlier. I think being a small community is really part of that. So I enjoy it. But just trying to put one foot in front of the other every day to make sure we maintain what I was given. So it's a lot simpler than it seems. It's a lot more difficult than it seems sometimes. But I think if we continue to do the work, we're putting ourselves in a good position for, the next 10, 15, 20 years. Because another thing to say is that it can fall off if you're not careful. In other words, if you're not putting in the work, if you're not having due diligence, if you don't have these great authority boards and commissions to contribute, it can fall off and things can happen, and you just don't want to take your eyes off the road, and you don't want to be that municipality.
Wow, I think that is so important. And for a lot of managers that are coming in, they're not always catching the situation that you're in. Having so much continuity before that, having that AAA bond rating, having a great budget, having a lot of support in the community. But that comes with its own challenges. You have to keep that engine going. You have to make sure that you're doing the things day to day that are necessary to maintain that momentum, because momentum is so important. Now, one thing I'd like to do is now kind of shift gears. So I felt like you were in the hot seat, and now you're into the more fun part of the interview. So these are our last chance games. So think improv. You just kind of just say what the first thing that comes to your mind. But I will give you a chance. We'll do about 2 to 3 questions, and then we'll circle back if you want to expand on anything. Or I've had people even change their answer at the end. So I'll start with the first one, which is a nice one to kick off. What is a policy that looks good on paper, but is just almost impossible to execute?
I wouldn't say it's impossible to execute, but the one that's really difficult for me and is the right to know request law. And it's also known as freedom of information, I guess, on the federal level. But so we call it RTKs, right to know requests in Pennsylvania. Not impossible, but I wish there was just a little bit more regulation on. And this is tough because you do want transparency. You do want people to get information, but sometimes it's taken such the other way. I mean, there's instances where, a prisoner who's bored in a prison can kind of just continue to send right to know requests to municipality, and they have to answer them as anybody else. And sometimes it's not looking at situational. It's all very black and white in terms of, okay, you have to answer these questions. You have to do this. So the right to know request is tough because we're limited staff. We only have a certain amount of time to respond. You have to look these records up. I mean, they're not just sitting there on my desk. And sometimes it can be taken advantage of to a point where staff doesn't have the time to keep up with it. And again, I think there's a legitimacy to freedom of information, to right to know. I just wish it was tweaked a little bit more in order to give our municipalities not a break, but just to have them answer the ones that are legitimate. Right now, you can't charge. You could charge for copies of the papers that they want, sort of nothing else. So you can spend 30 hours. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I'm just giving an example. You can spend 30 hours on a right to know request, and you can only charge them maybe $10 if that's all the copies for the paper comes up to. So the right to know request in theory looks amazing, right? And so, well, yeah, obviously we should all know everything what's going on with the government, transparency, but the execution of it, I find, at least on the Commonwealth level within Pennsylvania, can probably be tweaked to help municipalities and the manpower issues that we have at the municipal level for sure.
Wow, I never really thought about that, but yeah, to your point, when somebody is asking for something, it's not always just a quick Google search or repository search. You actually have to go and do it, and that takes time. So that actually dovetails nicely into my next question. What role do you not have on staff that would instantly change outcomes?
This is an easy one, grant writer for sure. Right now, we do sort of a hodgepodge, depending on the subject. Myself and different department heads will get involved in grant writing. We're green infrastructure, sewer, infrastructure, a lot of obviously infrastructure things that come up. We try to get grants for just like every other municipality. I think if we had a true grant writer, even if it was just quite honestly not on staff and just a company we worked with, which, we've had conversations on and off, maybe someday it'll happen. But the amount of money you can make up, I mean, because we're talking about grants that sometimes go well into the seven figures if you're doing a good job. So when you look at the salary you would pay back, or even just the amount you would pay a company on an as needed basis or retainer basis, I think there's opportunities to get back that in tenfold in grants. And it's tough because you see some of these, the way these grants come up, it really is just quick. Oh, yeah, this grants just came up. It's due in a month. And sounds like a lot of time, but when you're juggling a lot of other different projects, that's not a lot of time to get a grant application going. So, that's one thing that I feel like the Commonwealth can work on is processing these grants in terms of the communication on getting the information out there would be a lot more helpful to us. But definitely something in terms of a grant writer would be very, very helpful.
A ton of sense, just how much the outcomes can effectuate change in a community just by getting one of those large grants or the grant for the big thing that you needed right then. So this next one is a two-parter. They don't have to be the same task. So what is one task you think AI could help the municipality with? And then what is one task that AI could absolutely never help the municipality with?
Well, one, I think, and we've already started to see this in our industry, but I think the one low hanging fruit is some of the RFP stuff. When you request for proposals, when you go out for certain things, whether it be a service or a good, for instance, we're doing a trash bid for our new trash services to start in 2027. Now, we didn't do that with AI. We actually did it ourselves, but that's one you can kind of enter into a chat GBT type of program and say, what are some of the examples of a trash bid for our community like East Goshen Township. So I think requests for proposal processes and certain things like that AI can do wonders. I don't think it'll ever be able to navigate the management of public policymakers and the politics that come with that. So that's on sort of a whole nother level in navigating that world.
I think that makes a ton of sense. The RFP, yes, get that out, be efficient and use comps. But navigating the different stakeholders of a community, I cannot see, at least at this time, I cannot see
Yeah.
AI being able to effectively
I'll tell
do
you,
that.
if it ever got to that point, that would be kind of scary.
Yeah, I think we are in deeper issues at that point. What is the hardest truth you wish residents understood about trade-offs within making decisions as a township leader?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if it would be in terms of trade-off, but I think the one thing I want residents to know is that we truly do our best here to make sure you have the absolute premier community in Chester County and in the region. I mean, we do a lot every single day to make sure that East Goshen is functioning properly. Now, it doesn't always work all the time. I mean, you have stuff that goes wrong, and I'll be fully admitted. I mean, when things go wrong, whether it be I forgot to do something or we collectively as a township dropped the ball on something, we will correct it as best as we possibly can and as quick as we possibly can. But I definitely want them to understand the level of detail that we put in day in and day out to make sure that we're doing what we need to do in order for them to have the community that they have that I think they're proud of now and hopefully will always be proud of going into the future.
Yeah, it's there. Sometimes it can be that community cannot necessarily understand that we're trying our best. We are giving it the best effort, and sometimes we have to move deliberately instead of quickly because we are doing the due diligence necessary to make the right decisions
Yeah.
to the best of our ability. So
And
I think
also the
that's
classic sort of trade-off question or answer to that too is I call it classic, but I think it's true is what level of services are you looking for the tax rates that we're sort of implementing right now? So, and I think that's important. And I think it's important to treat residents like they're true adults and say, listen, we understand you want to pay lower taxes or you think your taxes are just right and you don't want them to go up. But here's kind of where we are on this subject. This is what that would cost and this is what that would do to the millage rate, which is how we do the real estate tax. So I found that if you are transparent in these I try to talk about everything I can in these public meetings. So if you're transparent and you talk about how you're going about things and why you're doing certain things and why you're making certain decisions, even if somebody at the end of the day doesn't agree with you, I think they appreciate that aspect of it.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I think you said it correctly. Treat people like adults. I love when people reason with me. Here, we could do that, but it would cost X, Y, Z. Is X, Y, Z something that you're willing to live with because what you're asking for is that important? If not, maybe in the future we'll get there, but just not right now. So I think that is definitely key. The next question I have is what is the most common hidden development constraint for housing development? So utilities, ownership, zoning, or politics.
I don't know if this would fall under politics, but it's more of the process itself. I mean, obviously, when you're going through land development, it could be pretty daunting. I mean, there's certain companies and land developers that deal with it all the time, but just hypothetically, and I'll be honest with you, I don't feel as much for those companies that go through it all the time. But, we've had instances where maybe somebody that owns a large enough piece of land want to do a subdivision on their own and possibly split one lot into two. I'm just giving you an example, and they don't really know how to go about it. There's obviously application processes, there's engineered plans. Whether you need zoning variances is a possibility depending on the situation. It might not always. So just the process itself, I think, is some of the biggest things. Now, on the flip side, I'm not saying that process is wrong. I think there does need to be checks and balances, and you do need to come through us to make sure that what you're building or what you're proposing to build is in keeping with what our policymakers and what our ordinances on the books say really needs to happen in those terms, as far as those residential neighborhoods, or if it's a commercial neighbor. But I think those are the biggest impediments. And I don't really have a great answer for how it can change because it's one of those things that is necessary. To me, it might just be more of an education of the process and us helping the people that are going through that, particularly if they're not professional land developers, understand the process and sort of holding their hand as much as we can through the process.
Derek, I think you brought up something that I think is important to double click on. Most times we think of the big developers or the big home builders, but a lot of this sometimes is enabling the local or the smaller scale developer to have a shot, to have a chance. So I think what you said is important, allowing those people to understand the process and make sure that they can be within the letter of the law, but just so they understand how to go about that. I think that's very important.
And I think it's actually, you touched upon that and that kind of rung a bell in my head. Young people getting into the profession. I advocate for young people getting into the profession of municipal government all the time. And I think it would be great. But also, I think we need young people in different aspects of this field or even on the peripheral of this field. And land developers is a great one. Developers and people that want to be a part of the community and really contribute to the community and not always be concerned. I understand this is capitalism and we all want to make money, but not be concerned as much with the line as you are with how this project really furthers the community that you're building it in. And I think that mentality switch from a land developer perspective and having those type of people in the profession would be a great thing going forward, particularly developers that are beyond coming up from behind us and younger than even us.
Sure. And I think to your point, those people that are of the community and grew up in the community and have that true tie to wanting to serve their community can just do it in a different way. So I like that. One more question before we get into some fun questions where I get to give you some free money. But my last question before that is what is the most or excuse me, what is the biggest long-term risk that can't be fully solved in a 2 or 4 year election cycle?
Infrastructure. So when you're talking about, we own sewer here in East Goshen. So when you're looking at sewer infrastructure, when you're looking at stormwater infrastructure, and stormwater infrastructure is becoming, as expensive as sewer infrastructure in a lot of ways. You have a lot of corrugated metal pipe that was put in the 70s and 80s that is now deteriorating, and we need to replace that from a capital replacement program standpoint. Roads, obviously, we do as much as we can to repair our roads, and we have a pretty good repaving program we do every year to replace certain miles of roads every year. But when you're looking at pipe replacement for sewers and stormwater, and then adding the roads on top of it, and then maintaining the parks that we have. You really need, it can't be 2 to 4 year cycles is not enough. But more importantly than that, you have to put together good capital replacement programs. You have to be able to point to it and say, okay, this is what we're replacing. And it has to be done before it gets dire, right? So it's easy to want to save money in a budget and say, you know what, we're going to push this off. We're going to push that off. We just can't afford it this year. That happens, and it's fine to do maybe once in a while if there's some real restraints, but you really want to stick to those capital infrastructure programs so that 30 years down the line, you're not dealing with fallout issues around the municipality from an infrastructure standpoint.
Very important. And that one, just across the nation, I hear the existential threat of failing infrastructure. Sometimes that was put in around the right after the Second World War. So that is very important. And yes,
Yeah.
2 to 4 years is not enough. It's going to take a coordinated effort, oftentimes at different levels of government. So
Now, on the
that's a
positive side of that, technology has changed so much. I referenced corrugated metal pipe. The things we're putting in the ground nowadays with some of this sort of high-end plastic pipes not only are better as far as longevity wise, but can also be a lot less invasive as far as the installation process and slip lining and things of that nature. So trying to disrupt the ground around you less with making the infrastructure last more and longer. So it's a win-win combo, in my opinion.
my last question is a three-parter, but as I stated before, you get some free money with this one. So if I added an additional $100,000 to the budget, what challenge or role would you tackle? Then if I added $1 million to the budget, what task or role would you or challenge would you tackle? And then the final one is add unlimited resources, unlimited capital capacity, people to work, people to strategize for a year. What would be the challenge that you would tackle?
So I'm gonna say the first one, I'm gonna be boring and give 'em kind of the same subject we just tackled. And I would say if it was $100,000, I would simply put that into a capital infrastructure replacement program to do more slip lining or more roads, or so staying on top of that stuff to me is worth it. So the $100,000 one, absolutely continue to focus on capital replacement and infrastructure where it needs to go. $1 million, I'm a bit of a tech guy recently with trying to update some systems in East Goshen. But when I first got here, I didn't feel like the systems we had as far as allowing people to participate remotely good enough. Matter of fact, it was almost impossible for them to participate remotely with the setup we had in our meeting room. So I have since, with the help of the board's approval, been able to make it a lot easier for remote participation for residents for meetings. Now, we still have a long way to go. So I think with that $1 million, which it sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about technology replacement, it goes pretty quick. But I would try to continue to outfit the building here and the administration building with more and more hybrid setups and technology that not only for us and being more convenient for us, but just making it easier for residents to participate in certain things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do if we didn't have that technology. And then lastly, the unlimited one, that I would say my dream is to eventually, I keep talking about our Parks and Rec department. We've been up for a gold medal in the National Parks and Rec Association a lot, and we didn't win it yet. But I love our Parks and Rec department. We do a lot more with less. We have, it's only 2 employees we have in our Parks and Rec. We do a lot of innovative program, which I'm proud of. For instance, we have a ping pong event every week for individuals with Parkinson's. And ping pong is supposed to be really, really good for them. It's supposed to work out some muscles that otherwise they can't. And we do that every week here, and it's been pretty successful. So I'm really proud of our Parks and Rec director, Jason Lang, and his assistant, Jess, and what they have done with our Parks and Rec. And again, one of the best parks I think we have in Chester County, East Goshen Park. So saying all that as a roundabout way to say, I would love to be able to build an exclusive Parks and Rec building, because we do a lot of the programming that we have indoors is here at the administration building, and there's a lot of overlap. So you have a lot of things going on at once when people are working. And, we make do. Again, I would not change his programming at all because I think he does a great job of keeping people involved that may otherwise not have many options. But I would love to have a building really just dedicated to parks and recreation and being able to have even more programming that could really capture more of our residents. I mean, we have senior citizen programming, we have camps for kids. We do a lot of fun, cool stuff here at East Goshen that I think we could even expand upon if you gave me that free checkbook and we were able to make a big Parks and Rec building somewhere on our campus. So, absolutely.
I love that. You range from the pragmatic, getting the improving the capital improvement budget, just so you can work on some infrastructure, to updating facilities to make it more accessible and transparent to your residents and to assist in the needs of staff. But then you got back to the heart of it with the Parks and Rec and creating a building so they can continue the great things that they're doing. So I love it. I think you hit all the boxes, and I'm hoping that a big windfall of money comes for the township, so you can knock out some of these things.
That would be
But
great.
there it is. Well, Derek, that's all the time we have today. But is there anything else you want to leave the community with?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate being on and explaining a little bit about our corner of the world. The only thing I'll leave you with is the employees and the policymakers on the municipal level in general, I feel are a special bunch. And we're here every single day doing our work and trying to be consistent for the people of our municipalities. And I say that because I know there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world today. As we've seen, there's a lot of tensions out there, even on the state levels sometimes. But I can promise you, and I've met so many municipal managers, I met so many different, whether municipalities call them council members or board members like us, we truly are hyper focused on bettering your communities. And I hope some people take comfort in the fact that the larger layers of government, whether they be state or federal, crazy things going on in the world, we're here, we're doing the work for you. We try to be accessible. We try to make an impact on your daily lives more than any other layer or level of government. And I just want everybody to know that we're not going anywhere. So appreciate you giving me that opportunity, and hopefully we can continue to make an impact one day at a time, one resident at a time.
That I think that's a great place to end it. Continue to make impact one day at a time, one resident at a time. Derek, on behalf of everyone here at Gentry, I'd like to thank you for coming by and sharing your insights and sharing the way you look at leadership in the township. I really enjoyed your perspective, and it shed some light on some great things. And to the viewers, thank you all for tuning in. Again, this has been the Gentry Podcast. I am your host, Jonathan Mason. And joining me today was Derek Davis, who is the East Goshen Township Manager in Pennsylvania. So thank you so much and have a great one.